Hello and welcome. In today's video reading, I thought I'd make something just for my Patreon members as a thank you for joining up to my membership and for continuing to show up to support me. This is going to be something I do usually actually include in my new moon and full moon readings, but I've decided to detach it from that astrology reading today and make a separate video of it. So it's going to be a tarot reading for this Aries new moon that we have on the 17th of April at 9:51 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. I do already have an astrology reading on this new moon on all my platforms, YouTube, Patreon, Substack, all of that. It's free access for everyone. If you haven't listened to that one yet, please do before you tune into this tarot reading because it'll make a lot more sense. If you have listened to my new moon reading already, then you know that this is a pretty dynamic lunation. It's a lot louder than the average new moon, and it's because there is a massive assembly of planetary bodies in Aries, and it's also because the fact that the ruler of this lunation, which is Mars, is in Aries and is in the thick of all of these planets in Aries. It's making multiple conjunctions to all the other Aries planets, activating everything, heating things up, and it's heading towards a triple conjunction with Mercury and Saturn, which is going to perfect only 3 days after this lunation. So on the 20th and the 21st of April, we'll have that one. So the significance of this new moon cannot be overstated because everything is just fires blazing, horns honking, go, go, go. Everything is just so activated and so lit up right now that this new moon is going to be a real pivot point, an initiation, like a launch pad into whatever it is that you're moving through personally in your life, but also on the world stage as well. On a personal level, the new moon is really going to be about yourself, your sense of self, your identity. This is about assertion and courage and making something or moving towards something that you choose as an independent individual. Of course, we do have to take into account that Aries and Mars are both signifiers of anger, conflict, accidents, incidents, survival instincts, being reactionary. And it does strike me as very synchronistic that today in Australia, we've woken up to the news that we've had a fire break out at one of the country's only remaining oil refineries. The February Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, which has really been prologuing. That was the prologue for all of these Aries placements that we have now. That Saturn-Neptune conjunction in February, among many other things, it does indicate issues surrounding oil and petrochemicals. And Aries is a fire sign, fire, of accidents and incidents. So as I said, we really do have this new moon heating everything up. We also have, of course, the activation of the Chiron-Eris conjunction, which perfected for the last time in March. It's now animated by this Aries new moon, which is conjunct Chiron and Eris as well. Interestingly, as a side note, this new moon, as well as Chiron and Eris, is currently conjunct the ascendant degree of Australia's natal chart, which I've been studying today after reading the news. The placement of this new moon is really interesting in terms of Australia's trajectory astrology. I'm not a practicing mundane astrologer, but I dabble most days, and I do have opinions and thoughts about geopolitics, the world's happenings in relation to nations' natal charts. So if you're interested in hearing astro topics that are more along the mundane, worldly side of things, do let me know in the comments. Australia does have some very interesting transits happening at the moment, which I think will be changing the way that we deal with and use our country's own concrete resources. But anyway, I've been digressing. For now, let's just get into the cards. My tarot reading for this Aries new moon. So I'm using the Good Fortune Tarot by Barbara Moore, illustrated by Jessica Roux. I love this deck so much, not only because I really admire Barbara Moore as a tarot expert, and I also adore Jessica Roux's art, but because the deck itself, it's a real straight shooter, which is so appropriate for Aries. It says it like it is, unapologetically. It keeps things simple, but it also has a real depth and profundity in doing so, as well as a very intellectual edge and a fair amount of sass in the guidebook. So if you are new to tarot and you want a really authentic but easy deck to get on with that can make you laugh, this is the one I would probably recommend. It feels like it actually does talk to you, having a conversation with a friend. Here in this reading, for the Aries new moon 2026, we have the Ace of Cups, the Three of Swords, and the traditional death card, which in this deck is not given a title, just the number 13. It's the 13th, number 13 in the major arcana sequence. So the two second cards, Three of Swords and number 13, they're definitely the more notorious, confrontational, difficult cards of the tarot. I'm going to explore each of the cards individually, but just if I were going to give this reading a quick look over and synopsis, it'd be just along the lines of, as a summary, sort of with the Ace of Cups, we've got new connections, new beginnings, new creations and relationships even that are coming through, confronting or painful circumstances with the Three of Swords, and ultimately require, with the death card, a letting go, ending, and a stripping back to the bare bones of what is true and what is truth. So there's a fair representation of Chiron here. Remember, Chiron's conjunct this new moon with the wounding side of things with the Three of Swords, and there's a representation of Eris with the confrontational nature of that number 13 card. And the new moon itself, I feel, is giving the signifying card with the Ace of Cups. And let's just start with the ace here, because the aces are the first cards of a suit. The ace represents a beginning, an opening, something new or newly founded. And the ace sort of holds the entire potential of the whole suit. It's like the suit's mascot, or like an iconic representation of that suit. And it, like the new moon, it's a seed point for intention and potential, and it's an opportunity to have, take, do, be, whatever this may be for you in this circumstance. So it's nice also to have a water element card here with the cup suit, given the amount of fire we have and the amount of tension we have in the other cards. With water, we have the potential for massive creativity and imagination and creation. And it's noteworthy, actually. I'm just thinking right now that on the day of the new moon, Mercury, planet of the mind, perfects its conjunction to Neptune, the planet of imagination, liminality, the divine. And there's also a fish here on this ace card, which is the symbol of Pisces, Neptune's rulership. So imagination and ideas may be really coming thick and fast here around this Aries new moon. And I do think that the dominion of Neptune, remember Neptune's at about 2 degrees of Aries at the moment, Neptune's likely to be very prominent around this new moon. So things that Neptune rules, not only things like oil, petrochemicals, and chemicals themselves, but the oceans, the seas, water, pipes, aqueducts, etc., ships, shipping. I mean, we've already seen that in the world right now too. Wilderness, nature, the weather, also liquor, drugs, pharmaceuticals, things like spirituality and religion as well. All of those things are probably going to come to the fore at this new moon. And of course, all of those things will have that Aries coloring of conflict, arguments, heating up, ideological disagreements, accidents, fire. And the little fishy on this card, that's just saying it to me, that these Neptune things will reach higher prominence. Even though Neptune's not part of this lunation, it's still co-present in the same sign, and it's undergoing that activation by Mercury on the new moon date. Neptune and the Ace of Cups both have a sense of idealism and hopefulness about them, even to the point of feeling like there's some kind of magic in the air to tap into here. And I do really feel like this is going to be strong around the new moon, just the amount of power and fire behind it. There will be something idealistic and magical that I think we're going to be able to connect with in a very strong way and bring into our lives. And with water, there is always an element of like cleansing and soothing and healing. So we have a more positive spin than to the new moon's conjunction to the wounded healer Chiron. So this can be a heart-opening experience, an experience of washing away what needs to be cleansed. Remember, I spoke about the yod with the south node at the apex in my new moon reading and that Aries forecast that I did. So that's a letting go, a cleansing. There's probably going to be some kind of massive release point that's activated around the new moon. It mayn't be pretty or neat. It may be a real pot stirrer, but ultimately it's the release valve or the letting go, which is going to initiate a new phase of emotional clarity and heart-centeredness here. So there's likely to be that sense of washing away something, washing your hands of something even. And the guidebook to this deck explains that the fish on this card, it's actually a koi fish, and kois are normally associated with prosperity, luck, and of course, love. So there is an opportunity here. There's an offer. There's a potential at the new moon to really connect, which is a moon word, a Mercury word, and a Neptune word. Connect to that sense of magic and abundance and divinity, whatever that means for you. And I do think that there is some kind of decision here, especially as the next card is in the air suit, which is about thinking and analyzing. There's going to be some kind of decision here, either to see things as a cup half empty or a cup half full, which is another phrase that Barbara Moore writes in the guidebook for this deck. And there's a fine line to tread in terms of that sense of toxic positivity that we can get when Neptune's involved, like over idealism, but also they're treading the line between being positive and being hopeful while we still have that strong malefic influence in Aries of Mars and Saturn. We've got Chiron and Eris in the mix. There's a choice to be made here in terms of how downtrodden you will allow yourself to feel and how negatively you're seeing things. I think it's going to be a real reboot in terms of perspective. It could be an eye-opener in terms of really making the best of what you have and realizing your capability and feeling how capable you actually are, using your true power, your true strength and potential, which is all Aries words, to pioneer forwards in the best way that you can, which is all anyone can do. And look, I don't usually use guidebooks or tarot books when it comes to doing these kind of readings, but I did feel drawn to look up in my favorite tarot book about the Ace of Cups, which I'm really glad that I did. So I'm just going to read the introduction to the Ace of Cups that is in the book called The Wild Card. This is by Jen Cownie and Fiona Lensvelt, two gloriously witty women. And they say, if there is one thing that the internet has told us many times, it is that there is a strong case for cats being liquids. The evidence: they can fit themselves perfectly into any shape of vessel available to them, flush against all surfaces, no corner left unfilled. There is apparently no space into which a cat cannot pour itself and then exhibit great contentment with itself for having done so. This is the image to hold in your mind when the Ace of Cups turns up in a tarot reading. When this card appears, a metaphorical liquid cat is at large. Someone has the opportunity to decide what shape and volume of space they would like to take up in the world, and frankly, they have a lot of options. So essentially, there is an ever-flowing fountain of possibility here, and it reminds us that in terms of these cups themes of love, hope, creativity, there's an infinite source to dip into within. And when we tap into that sense of prosperity and abundance, that potential spreads out and it permeates any aspects of your life that you direct it. So I do think, just getting back to that Chiron and this healing process with the wateriness, just kind of semi-segueing into the next card, that there's truly such a strong potential here to tap into your healing, your vision, to embrace the hardships that you've been through, to be able to bridge away to this divine potential within, whatever this is for you. And I also think it's a subtle reminder to remain adaptable, remain flexible and fluid in these times, like the cat being able to form itself into any shape, into whichever container it wants to jump into next, but also to really embody those water element words of compassion, empathy, kindness, open-heartedness, and love, just amongst the polemic ethos of the times, this really adversarial energy that we have, bigotry, exclusion, fear, selfishness, anger, and impulsivity flying all about the place during this very Aries time, because by opening to love, there's less room for that to take hold within you. On that note, let's look at the Chiron Eris conjunction, which I feel the second card is truly speaking to here. So the Three of Swords is one of just a couple of cards people tend to dread coming up. Actually, both the number 13 card and the Three of Swords, they're both cards that are rather notorious and largely misunderstood, I do have to say. So the Three of Swords first. It's an air element card. It's around the mind, intellect, communication, ideas. However, I have found it to also be a very emotional card. It literally has a giant heart on it, pierced by swords. You don't really get more emotional and more Chiron than that. This is about heartbreak. In contrast to the previous Liquid Cat card, this is about pain and wounding, usually via some type of unkindness and betrayal, cruelty, or even like a purposeful infliction of pain. When we consider that this is actually an air card, a swords card, this becomes centered around facts, words, communication, even truth. And sometimes the truth itself can cause pain, which is something we really need to look at if this is what's coming up. Now, as Barbara Moore's guidebook says, sometimes the facts of harsh realities, like the truth, it's used to inflict pain. Going back on your word and being betrayed can be a glaring signification of this card as well. And this card is also very Chiron in the sense that usually when it comes up, it does indicate some kind of heartbreak or sorrow that changes things significantly. Sometimes when I pull this card, so far, I'm usually witness to or learning of someone's heartbreak or pain. But a lot of the time, this card for me signals a day full of anxiety. It's not even necessarily a day that's full of stress or pressure, but the anxiety is still there. So sometimes this card shows where maybe emotions and feelings are running rampant just because of the overworking mind. And it can be a call to not control your emotions, but just to own them, to be aware of them. And maybe because this is an air card, to step back and detach just enough to see clearly so that you can go back into those feelings with some perspective to be able to work through them. But then this is also a card that says that maybe you do need the time and space to be able to do that, giving yourself some time and space and perspective, which is probably something that's not very available to most of us right now because, you know, this strong Aries energy, this new moon energy, it's very subjective. It's very in the thick of it. It's very self-absorbed. It doesn't necessarily mean selfish, but it's very self-absorbed kind of an energy. So it can be a nice reminder with this card to sort of step out and maybe gain a little bit of perspective. Now, I did mention trauma in my new moon reading, and that is also what this card can show. I'm not a therapist. This card can also open up the dialogue in order to address what hurts, address what happened, because by acknowledging that sorrow and grief, pain, betrayal, violation, whatever it is, that is the main step to healing through it. Now, I'm not a therapist, but that is the fact. This is not a card that gives the answers or gives the antidote, but it does point out that this sense of pain is here. And like Eris, it's pointing something out that is potentially wildly uncomfortable and disruptive. And having that wound or sense of weakness pointed out, it can open up a whole plethora of emotions, which is what's likely to happen around this new moon, can of worms, Pandora's jar. This card is about what you do with that. And it also sort of warns of not letting the pain or wound just sort of sit there and stew, because that's just asking for trouble with Eris. That's just asking for an eruption. So It's interesting with this particular depiction of the Three of Swords. It shows a very Chiron-like image in that the swords that are piercing this heart, they're starting to be removed. And you can see that this owl with the cute little crown has already removed one of the swords. And I think this sort of shows the sovereignty with that little crown of what the owl represents. So the sovereignty of wisdom and experience, and the sovereignty and power of what it has when you're capable of blending both the intuition and the intellect, which are two contrary things that the owl represents. So the owl is highly tuned intuitively to the emotional realms which exist and function below the surface, like in the dark. But the owl also represents having the perspicacity of the mind's intellect and having logic and perspective. And by blending those two, intuition and intellect, and by having that perspective and by having that depth of emotional intuition, the cause, the root of these wounds can start to be addressed and worked through. That doesn't mean the wound itself disappears. It doesn't mean you're not going to be scarred. This is what Chiron represents. This is something that's inherent within you that you're going to carry for your life, but it's what makes you strong and wise and beautiful. And if you can see in this card, the gold here that is filling the scars from these swords, gold is the color of pure love. And it hasn't made these scars disappear, but it's filled these scars with compassion and acceptance and the transcendence that you receive when you finally finish a trial. The Three of Swords can be about finally releasing pain, and it's about the integration of your experience and growth. On the flip side of that, there's probably going to be themes of maybe emotionally or spiritually bypassing things or attempts to do so, or it's going to be pointed out that that's happening. Eris will point it out. The pain and suffering will be acknowledged. Some kind of injustice will be acknowledged. Or on the world stage, some kind of pain or suffering or injustice may be perpetrated, which initiates a whole new cycle of wounding. Let's hope that doesn't come to pass, but that's certainly a possibility. Now, those wonderful ladies of literature, which I quoted before, Jen Cownie and Fiona Lensvelt, they have a quote in their section of the Three of Swords from the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl. And the quote is, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." So whatever reactionary circumstances we have coming up here, given the amazing quantity of warmongering Aries planets and the sensitivity of this new moon conjunct Chiron and Eris, this card's also a reminder to remain mindful and self-aware throughout it all, to honor and acknowledge what is going on for you internally in your life, anything that's causing you pain, sorrow, fear, or any betrayal or wounds that you have, to honor and acknowledge that for what it is, and to use both your intuition and your intellect to move through that. And with that Ace of Cups, just having some compassion for yourself in that process. Now, on the last tarot card, the Death card, just labeled number 13 in this deck, I do have to say that this is a very jolly figure depicting death. This is a major arcana card, which means that this is going to be something very significant here. And it's occurring around these themes that the Death card represents, which is transition, endings, cycling, and release. So there are a few very powerful symbols that I see straight away on this card. First is the crown that this dancing skeleton of death is wearing, and it's made of antlers, which is a nod to a very ancient symbolic meaning of both nature and cycles. And the fact that this is a crown does show that in the end, nature will have its way. Cycles are sovereign. Cycles will continue to cycle. Secondly, apropos of that, the sun is rising. So even though there are endings, life continues, things move on, a new day will always dawn. And no matter how hard things may seem, it's not going to last forever. In fact, nothing does last forever. Another thing, thirdly, this skeleton is dancing and it looks mildly ridiculous, which I see as a message that saying that endings can be joyful, or if not joyful, they're not necessarily to be feared. But the most important thing that I notice in this card is the golden egg that's within this skeleton. And Barbara Morse kind of refers to this in the guidebook when she says, this is an invitation to strip down and down and down until our golden soul becomes the star of the show. So there is something here about getting to the bare bones of something, shedding, cleansing, letting go until the most important and vital truth remains. Then the cycle that can begin anew, freer and more authentic than before. And it is your soul that matters the most here, whatever that means for you. What is essential now, it's not trying to continue on the way that you've been, but to direct yourself where your inner light truly wants to go, which is very Aries. And this will involve probably an ending and a transition, and that can be bloody scary because we don't know what's going to happen. In fact, sometimes this card can come up when there is simply a fear of the unknown. There's a lot of unknown around at the moment. And you know, life is full of it. We can't know everything. We don't have a crystal ball. We have astrology, which is a great roadmap, though, and we can't control everything. This card kind of ties in with the South Node in Virgo, which is about having to release and let go, that involvement of Pluto with the ruler of this lunation, saying that power comes from transformation and change. And we've also, remember, got Lilith in the sign of death itself, Scorpio, death. These are all pointing rather saliently to the fact that something has to die, something has to end. This is some kind of beginning of an end or the end to something already started. Something about an ending is going to come through from this new moon or lead up to this new moon itself. New life will rise, new things will come. It's a new moon, so it's a beginning, and it's in Aries, the initiation of the whole zodiac. So this is a seed point, a start, but it's coming through the finalization or the crumbling away of something. And this card can also signify where there is some kind of resistance to natural change, clinging to the past, an inability to let go of old paradigms because of this terror of the unknown. It very rarely signifies physical death, usually not, but it's a confronting card because, of course, it represents the thing that we've been conditioned to fear above all else. So what it can also signify is having to confront Aries, something that frightens us. And this can be around with, the Aries new moon. This can be around stepping forward, taking action, leading, being brave. Can also bring up massive survival instincts, base chakra themes, and also the potential to transition through those things into something more authentic, freedom-based, and autonomous. So just to recap, new moon, we've got with the Ace of Cups, new creation, new beginning, coming through some kind of ending and transition here with death and involving a sense of wounding or pain or sense of inadequacy. Healing through that in order to step into this new beginning. So this seed point might be one that's fraught with conflict and fear, or it may be the launch forward into a personal direction that you've always wanted to travel, even if it means confronting something that you'd rather not look up, something painful, or even facing the unknown. So that brings me to the end of this reading, I think, which I didn't expect to go for so long. So thank you so much if you made it to the end. Thank you so much for supporting me and being a member. It truly means a lot to me, and I never, ever take it for granted. I hope you have a wonderful Aries new moon, and I look forward to seeing you in my next forecast. Thank you.